Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone, from a very early morning Seattle. How's everybody doing?
Man, not as good as you.
I'm up. We're moving. It's going to be a good day. I've got two booth sessions that I'm doing today. I'm helping out at the Microsoft Fabric booth, so I'll be answering questions and doing things with people and kind of just talking about architectures and answering questions around what's new inside Power BI, what things are coming out. So that will be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I get really energized at conferences. Shocker. I like people. So yeah, it's been super fun.
It's the awesome major difference between extroverts and introverts.
Yeah, people energize me. I get all hyped up.
Are you excited? Are you excited? Are you more excited at the end of a day by interacting with so many people, or are you just exhausted if you've talked to that many people? Yeah,
I'm a selective extrovert then, because it depends who I'm talking to.
Or about what, right? I mean, if I'm
about-
talking about if it's things that I'm passionate about, yeah, all day long, no problem. I'm there. I'm talking about it.
How are between our previous podcast where you were out there and hand to tended? What I haven't seen any shorts, Mike. I thought we were gonna have like little candid mic.
Yeah, they don't turn out very good when you're holding your own phone. So
I'm just giving you grief, dude. I never expected.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I've actually seen Build is interesting. I've never been to Build before. It's my first time at Build. It's been a really good conference. There's a lot of there's a lot of production to it. There's like a whole stage. They got this huge when we've been to Fabric conferences, yeah, there's like a stage and there's like a camera or two kind of hitting around, but like everything feels a lot more compact. There's a lot of like booths right next to the main stage. A lot of vendors are supporting, and a lot of developers are here. So I'm talking to a lot of different companies now. Talking to Miro is here, one of the companies that is at the conference, which I absolutely love. Miro. I use Miro all the time for whiteboarding and putting things down and working with clients. The class that I run, the training class that I run, the data governance class for Power BI, we use Miro all the time in all of our presentations. And there was a ton of things that they were showing me, like I didn't even know existed. So I was like, this is great. I came by their booth. They taught me these new things. People have been very friendly, and a lot of the people I've been talking to. So I'm manning a booth area. So I'm actually there's like a data and AI channel. They have like Cosmos DB, SQL Server, MySQL. They have real-time analytics now. So there's like a whole data platform kind of area, and I've been representing the Fabric and the Power BI side of that. So a lot of people have been coming up in questions, and I've actually had a number of really good conversations around embedded. A lot of customers developer conference, right? Maybe they're exploring some things. I don't know. But so the questions for me feel like they've been split 50-50 between how do I do embedded for my organization? What does that look like? And how can I do it securely? And then the other half of the questions is like, okay, everything's Copilot. Show me some Copilot inside Power BI. Like what does Copilot look like inside the context of desktop? So I've been doing a lot of demos around Copilot. One of the things that I don't think anyone's really seen, it's not been announced at Build, but it's kind of been around for a while, is the DAX query view. I show people this. There is that people are very much, so if you think about Copilot inside the context of Power BI, you have like Copilot for the report author. Hey, how do I make pages? What's our insightful things? Make me a visual, something more towards the visual. There's like a Copilot experience. It's more like report authoring experienced.
Yeah.
And then you flip over to DAX query view, and now you have a more code centric, a builder, a modeler experience of Copilot. And there's and the demo I have is actually pretty good. I mean, I just pull up one of my star models that I have, and it has a little prompt for Copilot, suggest measures. And it suggests 3 measures that you might want in your model. It writes out all the DAX for you. And it follows the same naming convention as my other measures in my model,
nice.
Which is really kind of cool. So I have like a lot of my measures are some of the column name, right? Some of sales, some of cost of goods, some of units sold. And then it was going in and said, well, you might want averages on things. And then it would do like average price per product. And so it was doing some other divisions and adding not super complex DAX, but some simpler ones. And then I was doing a demo around going to Performance Analyzer, and then you can drop a query directly down to DAX Query View. So I have a visual, it's running, and then I immediately take the query, put it down in the DAX Query View, and you explain the query. Oh my word! It gave me like 3 paragraphs of explanation of like, what is this DAX doing? And it literally it said, it looks like this DAX is from an auto-generated tool. It looks like this is being summarized.
It's kind of passive aggressive.
Tagged myself in this. Like, I wrote this for you.
I wrote this for you. Yes, yeah. But it was really cool. So it did a good job of that. And then what it did is, it gave you like a summary of things. And then it went in, you know how you have when you write a DAX query view, or sorry, when you get a performance analyzer, it has like DSO core, it has like DSO filtered, DSO1, DSO2. Like, so all the filter context that it builds for the DAX, it builds in desktop. Well, it goes through each section, DSO1, DSO4, DSO2, like what all the numbers that it has, and it describes why is this DAX here? Here's what this DAX is doing. And then it went through and it found all the functions and gave you this function does this. Summarize columns is this function. Here's what it's doing. Keep values. Here's what this function is and what it's doing in the formula. It was pretty impressive. I mean, it's definitely like, it's not going to make you a Marco or Alberto, but it definitely provides a lot of technical support where you need it. Like, this stuff doesn't work. Help me figure out this formula.
So what a great learning tool.
Yes, exactly. Well, and it brings a lot of there's other references you could do, like define this function, or what does this function mean? Or like, you can kind of pick out additional things that you can talk to the Copilot. But that's, I think, really the value is there's a whole bunch of searchable internet or information about these things. Like, you're just trying to get to an answer quickly of like, what's going on here? Something's not quite right. And it's giving you a lot of good context around that. So anyways, that's what I've been doing. And then sadly, I haven't been able to make a lot of sessions because I've been so excited about all the training and helping and talking to people. So I've been doing a lot of networking, but I haven't been attending a lot of, and there's actually, to be frankly honest, there's not a ton of Fabric sessions. It's a lot more around like general, like AI, huge. I mean, this year it feels like the build is tons of AI. It's large language models. It's doing RAG with large language models. It's how to deploy models. Like there's really a big sense around Copilot is in everything, and every experience is going to be easier with AI. And I think that the bigger announcement here is there's like AI and PCs, right? So they're doing this whole, like, we're going to bring direct AI things and run them on your computer without having to go back out to the cloud. So anyways, pretty interesting stuff.
I did watch the main keynote. They talked about that, and that's when I yelled, "Hey, I need a new computer!"
Right? Well, think about it. I mean, one of the more expensive things that Microsoft has to run in the cloud is the AI. It's a graphics processor unit. It's an expensive piece of hardware, and it is so. If you have a ton of people hitting AI all the time, the models themselves, they're not building net new models. I mean, they're building them, but they're like getting deployed or whatever, right? But they need some hardware to run this stuff on. And so you do the training, you build the model, and the model just gets served into a computer, and the graphics processor just chews, and all your questions get done with this. I feel like there's going to be needing to be a lot of work around making that execution of the model as efficient as possible. And it's going to get so efficient that, and this is why I think PCs are going to be becoming a very big thing here, is they're going to want to push those down and have the AI basically living on your machine and being able to serve the information directly from there. This is going to be, I think, the new movement, I guess, because now you don't have all that cost of AI sitting in a server inside Microsoft space. You've already purchased the computer. You're just going to use it locally to keep churning through it.
Yeah. And
it's going to be cheaper for them to run it.
They talked about Moore's law, but now they're calling this the scaling law, where we're kind of like almost not restarting with PC and computation, but to your point, who thought graphics cards were what really runs AI? So I think they're realizing if we try to scale this on a cloud, we would bankrupt everyone. So we're like, let's get everyone the computation. Anyways, I know that's a little off topic. That gets me excited, but I'm going to be trying to get a new computer.
after you just bought one, like, what, 2 months ago?
Right. But weren't you already trying to do this, Tommy? Right? Like load up AI into the computer.
But it's slower. But like I said, the fact that they're building this intertwined already, I already upgraded my graphics card because of this. But the fact that you can intertwine this, like they're building the PC specifically to run LLMs or local models or do a lot of the things that absolutely slow down AI. Like the PCs are meant for that, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I feel like it will maybe go both places, right? It'll get more efficient enough that I can run on my local PC, and then maybe it'll get so efficient that they then pull it back in the cloud and they just give it to you as a service again. Like it'll probably just like juggle back and forth between these different things to compete there. So
it's like when we had the white paper about Power BI. Here's what you need for your how to run Power BI on your computer. Now we're like, it's the cloud. Speaking of,
so we can go through. So just to be clear, in Build there is a session from Amir and Arun going through all the kind of the book of announcements, updates and things, current new things that are coming out, features coming out for just Fabric. So I believe if you are not currently attending Build, you can sign up for free online. You can watch the keynote online for free. So the topic, I guess, kind of for today is going to be kind of going through more of the announcement, and there's actually a blog post that's also in the description of the video where you can actually go check out and see the actual announcement. I'll put that in the chat window as well. But there's an announcement of the May 21st kind of landscape of Fabric at this point. So that's kind of what the main topics we're going to go through there, is kind of touching on some of the new features there. Anything that stood out to you guys on from the main blog? What kind of things coming out or stood out to you, or even things that you're already seeing inside Fabric in your tenant that are already standing out to you?
Well, I think the two biggest ones, and we'll see which direction you want to go, is without you doing anything, we now have task flows, which are probably the biggest game changer in the last year. I would go out and say. And then the real-time analytics that's now on your left-hand pane, to Mike's saying, takes up some real estate, some precious real estate. Those to me are the two ones. If you were living under a rock and just opened up Power BI, you would notice.
Mm-hmm. So task flows was announced at Fabric Conference. So it's not a new thing, but we haven't been able to play with it really. And so literally like a week or so before Build, task flows gets launched. And so we have these things. And I don't think we've actually talked about task flows on the podcast yet. So maybe we should just start with, quickly touching on some task flow pieces. New features out. Do you guys like it? Do you think the functionality is right? What do you think about the task flow? Maybe we define what it is. A task flow is this UI. It's basically allowing you to have blocks of information that attach to each other through basically the Power BI workspace environment. So think of it like I have pipelines, I have potentially lake houses, I potentially have semantic models and reports. You can now group those things into what you would almost use as a diagram on a whiteboard, right? If you're explaining to someone, hey, I'm going to build this thing in Fabric, and I'm going to draw out the whiteboarded diagram, this is what you would use you draw this, right?
Yeah.
Ingestion over here, store data here, serve data there. And that's kind of like the mentality there. And so I think what this is doing is giving you a lot more flexibility to, at a high level, you're going to have a lot of artifacts. And I think I was quickly at one of my and Tommy's observations of doing our Learn Fabric series on YouTube. Within 2 or 3 episodes, we had gobs and gobs and gobs of assets and resources and things all over the place. So what we should do, Tommy, I'm gonna tag you on this one then. We need to go back to our Learn Fabric workspace, and with all the things in there, we should then reorganize them into task flows. So we have it already kind of organized out for this new we should do it. Just
instead of
reorganize it.
Let's Learn Fabric, we'll call it Let's Clean Fabric.
Let's clean Fabric. Let's organize Fabric.
Yeah, let's organize Fabric. Well, no, Mike, to your point, this is Lineage View 2.0. I need to visualize all these artifacts I have in a workspace, which a lot of you already know can get very cluttered, and actually organize it both by lineage, like this starts first and this is dependent on this, tag it, and really, to your point, organize it in a visual mapping view, which not just makes sense, is the logical way to look at all these artifacts. I would say it's not just it's not a better view. It's probably should be the default view on how we're trying to do all of these different artifacts and engines and runs. And if you haven't tried it out yet, it should be the preferred way to look at all of your artifacts if you're doing any runtimes in Fabric.
One of the coolest things I like about it is the ability to click on a card in the task flow, and it immediately filters everything down below to only the items I care about. So, that by itself is just an incredibly helpful feature. And then also, I mean, again, with this is, again, people won't do it, but they need to be kind of like, we need to build muscle memory to do this. But each card can have its own description. You can actually describe, why does this thing exist? What are we doing with it? Because I have found myself, when I build medallion architectures inside a workspace, I'm trying to add numbers in the front of the different things to kind of sequence them together, right? I may have one pipeline that runs a lot of other pipelines. Well, I name them a certain way in order to get the order of the items in the list to show up correctly. So previously, you might do like initial load pipeline, all these other things.
Yeah.
You don't technically need to do that. You're kind of wasting valuable namespace to try and orient the things in the pipeline correctly, so you can at least see the list of objects correctly. I think this simplifies a lot of that as well.
That's interesting. It doesn't all need to be in Fabric, though, right? And you like the nice thing is obviously in each one of those tasks, the objects that are within the workspace, etc., are all part of and grouped by that. But you can still, like, if you have an external source, right, that's not part of it, you can still name it and still use this as kind of the documentation or the area where you have those other things coming into this flow prior to it being self-contained within Fabric, right? And I guess the value there would be, if you're not directly just building straight in Fabric right away, or it's a migrated effort or something that you want to kick the tires on and just see, like this to me speaks to that flexibility that's in there already.
Yeah. I'll also, you bring up a good point there, Seth, and I think something else that's very relevant with this as well is there is this workloads, or not workloads, it's what's it called? It's pre-built task flows, I guess would be templates. Okay, templates is what I'm going for. There are templates of this that make this even easier for you to start with something. So like, hey, I've heard this thing called medallion architecture. Let's start there. And literally builds the task flow with no objects in it, and then describes, here's the kind of objects you'd want to fill each of these cards with. And you can delete them, you can move them around, you can rearrange them. But the neat part for me was here are examples of other architectures that are already existing. Start here. I think that's also very helpful because people are overwhelmed on how to build things.
So when I saw the template, that posed the question immediately. Of course, I think of you guys now all the time, probably more than I need to. But I saw the templates and I posed a question I want to pose to you guys. That's an amazing ramp up time for someone who's maybe not familiar with medallion architecture, someone who's not a data engineer. Maybe they're in analytics. Maybe they're a business user. Maybe they've heard about this and they can automatically start with a medallion architecture or some very, very common patterns around data engineering. Is this really going to ramp up the learning curve for non-data engineers?
No, I don't.
Mike's shaking his head like, nah, no.
He looks like a bobblehead.
I agree and I disagree, right? Like, I think what's helpful about it is, I don't think it's like a learning tool, but I think it is a helper tool from the standpoint that it's like you can take these templates and you can see what the default setting or default steps in that process should be, right? So for brand new folks to a particular area, or you're exploring a few of these pre-selected kind of outputs, there's value in like, oh, hey, go select this thing. Here's all the steps you're going to need to do. And then it's just a matter of like plugging in the parts of that. So I yes, it's kind of helpful, but I wouldn't say it's like this massive learning tool.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's more of a like there's some methodology, there's some more education, there's some like you do need to read up on medallion architecture to like figure
Yeah.
out what that looks like. So I would want to echo. You probably should do some more research.
Yes.
Hey, here's some training. Here's some documentation. Hey, here's the learn.microsoft that talks about what is medallion architecture. Right? There should be some pairing between this. So here's the go fast button, and then here's links to training and things that enhance that even further.
I like that because I think the biggest hurdle a lot of people have, especially with a lot of these products, is access to what's right. And I think, yeah, this is a good first step. However, to your point, this is not like, hey, build me a star schema, I'll get some coffee, and then it's done. There's obviously the learning, but I think just the access is pretty neat that they're doing that. I really like that little nice touch that they're doing on the task flows. Dude, we have a ton of other things to cover. I'm looking through all the blogs and notes. Like task flows was not even a build announcement.
No, I mean they touched about it on the keynote, but
Yeah.
I mean it's not. You're right. It's not an actual like new thing that came from build.
Yeah.
Let's go on a little bit further with some other items here. So I'm going to pick on one here just really quick. This is probably not in any particular order. I'm just picking up things that I was thinking about here. The new addition of Iceberg as a format for being able to be used inside Fabric, which is really interesting. This seems like a very direct play towards Snowflake. Snowflake is out. Snowflake uses the Iceberg format to store their data. So now Fabric both absorbs Databricks and Snowflake data sets because the Delta or the format of their files is either Iceberg or Delta formats. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
And I agree.
Yeah. I would play on that too. I think that they also have now shortcuts for on-premise data sources. So it's kind of like this whole game plan that they're having on like, when we said we're going to be this central storage or central area for all your data, we mean it. So yeah.
Oh, and I would be remiss, Tommy, that's a good one too. Mirroring is a very hot topic. Mm-hmm. Mirroring is like really, so I was like, okay, mirroring, fine. Like I don't do a lot of mirroring. I'm not sure if I want it. I don't know. Like, but man, people are really interested. I had a lot of questions around what is mirroring? Where can I get it? How do I turn it on? So, and there's a really big push from Microsoft. They're giving you mirroring for free. Like the compute used to do the mirroring, they're just going to do. They're going to pay for it. The storage that's going to be used for mirroring, there are limits, there's thresholds, but you're getting free storage to collect that information and mirroring. This is very strategic. And I think, to me, wherever that data lives, mirroring. So remember how I said, maybe said this in the podcast before, look, Microsoft, make it easy. There's common workloads I know I need to do over and over and over again. Yeah. One of them is an activity like mirroring. I just want that production data in the raw tables as they live in my lakehouse. Just make it happen. Mirroring is that feature to some degree. So I've got to so for me, I mean, one who's been micro batching and loading in large chunks of data, I really need to seriously take a look at mirroring and making sure I understand, like, where do I put it and aptly understand what's the value here to me as the business and what kind of data sources can I connect to? This could solve a lot of simple ETL engineering patterns that I just don't care about managing. I just want the current record showing up in my tables, period.
Well, I think that's the big shift too. I think that there's this whole big strategy. If you were to look at Microsoft big whiteboard of Fabric on their game plan, this is, which I would love to see. It's a pretty big whiteboard. I have a pretty big one, but I'm assuming they have a lot of marks on it. But I think a big point of this, Mike, is with mirroring, with what they're doing with Iceberg, what they're doing with shortcuts with on-prem too. When we thought on-prem was dead, it's no. Fabric's not just all the products. It's not just we centralize all your products, which by itself is amazing. It's the fact that no, you have one place, like one lake. I think Amir said this. One lake is the heartbeat of Fabric, and I think that you're kind of seeing as kind of like the underlying wave of all these other features that they're releasing. Everything else is cool, but wouldn't you just take OneLake by itself, even if it didn't have all the other bells and whistles?
I mean, this is a pattern that I think is occurring. I don't know. In the last 5-6 years, I've been using Databricks to do data engineering. Like, it's this idea of separation of storage and compute. It's using big data technologies to kind of do ACID transactions. Like, this feels like we've seriously moved away from the days of I need to land all my data into a SQL engine, SQL computer, SQL server, right? Then to render it to Power BI. It makes no sense. I mean, Seth and I argued about this a lot when it first kind of came out. I was like, Seth, why do I need to keep a SQL server on for the entire month and pay for it to run when all I really need to do is load data for like 30 minutes to an hour every morning, and it stays cached in my analysis services models. So like, to me, there's like a whole story here that I was like, I don't need all this extra weight of all the systems. I just want to store it and then I want to read it. So just make that easy for me. And I was very annoyed that there was no easy to use system to do this. And this now feels like Fabric. It feels like OneLake. It's this easy to use, store things down, pay for what I use and not actually have to consume all this compute all the time just to get data into reports.
It does change the questions that we ask in terms of if I'm dealing with a few projects right now, or a few projects I had in the past, it's like, okay, how am I going to push this to a SQL database? Like, what are the different steps? Now it's like, well, how do I just push it to Fabric? I have shortcuts. I have mirroring. I can get this done in a week.
To be fair, like, Microsoft is making it much easier. Like, all of the tools that Microsoft's building, data flows, Python notebooks or Spark notebooks, the pipelines, the fact that every single compute engine is talking to the lake and reading and writing data to the lake, that's huge, because that was what was missing before. Because you could do it, but you did need a bit of knowledge and code and figuring things out. Like, it wasn't as smooth and easy as it is right now. It's literally a click of a button, pick the thing, here's a destination, name the table, boom, done. I'm off to the races. So the fact that they've really simplified that experience, I think, makes this a lot more accessible to a lot more of the organization.
Yeah, and I think your last point is what really hammers it home, right? Like, Fabric is making things easier so that we can focus on the most important thing that we're trying to do, which is get data to a place that we can analyze and use it, right? Make it meaningful. Yes. And it's removing a lot of those barriers of just the structure of things and the infrastructure, right, that we have to build to move the data to a position where we can start to, analyze and use it. So I love that point.
This is all very, I think, strategic.
Of course,
in order, yeah. Well,
I hope so, right? Like,
I'm going to give you.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you the
Captain Obvious.
I'm going to give you the big game. I'm going to give you the big game plan here. The big game plan here is you can't do AI on any data until the data is one place.
Yeah.
So like the whole,
right.
Yeah. This is really feeling like this is OneLake that's what the heart, right? It's the central place. It has to be the single spot where you put all the information, because from there, then we can do all the other things. Copilot doesn't get good at doing data things unless you have all the tables there described with metadata. The AI won't know what your columns mean, but your AI will be able to better understand what columns you have when you actually add descriptions to them. And you describe what information is in this table and how is it valuable to your business. If you put that into your models and into table descriptions, that enhances this whole experience. And so this brings me to kind of like my next point. Copilot was just announced that it's now generally available. So Copilot in Fabric is now generally available. That was one of the announcements. And it is now on by default in your eligible tenant. So if your tenant is eligible, meaning you have a P1 or F64 or higher, those capacities will have Copilot turned on by default. I don't really love it when things switch to turn on by defaults. There is a blog article about Copilot being on by default, and you can go change your admin settings to turn it off if you want to, or have certain people use it or not. But be aware, your co-pilots will start appearing in your Fabric-enabled capacities. I'm pretty sure you're going to get a lot more messaging around trying to get that to work in your tenants.
Yeah. So we these are so far already big topics, big potential changes within organizations. Super helpful. I'm going to bring it down to things that I'm going to implement right away
All right.
in some of the report updates. So one of the biggest gripes from not only like internal but external customers has always been around matrices, tables of information. Like just I just can't tweak it enough. I can't fix it. I can't. So the new updates to the matrix layouts and selections, I guarantee you are hitting the next sprint in my team. Like as far as we're going to revisit a whole lot of matrix visuals for customers and reports, because it is a instant win when it comes to like a rolled out change that was just announced. So I'm super stoked about it. Yes, it's just a report visualization, but that's where like there's a practical like thing I can deploy immediately out of all this, and I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah. And yeah, the big things from the matrix layout that Seth's talking about is they're just further aligning with Excel. Everyone wants an Excel layout. Microsoft's like, fine, here in Power BI, your Excel layouts. I think now you can pick the outline form, tabular form, compact form, all in Power BI, which is, and a lot of the other kind of enablements like show blank row or not. So really aligning with how people want to view tabular data or want to view data in a table form, which no, I agree, Seth. There's a lot of things that I'm like, all right, this one, I'm going back to. So this is
so one the announcement previous does pique my interest, because all three of us had, and especially Mike, you and I met Miguel a long time ago, well before he was on the Microsoft team, and so was already doing some pretty astounding things with Power BI visualization.
Yeah.
There's a comment that's made in the modern tooltips, and I don't know if it was directly out of his LinkedIn post, but or part of the announcement, but it says it's modern tooltips are changing. So it's just kind of like a white box now with some text in it.
Yep.
And they've made this change because it's the first step in a series of remarkable improvements. These future developments promise to revolutionize tooltip management and customization, offering possibilities that were previously only imaginable. Now, for the normal person, right, like that would read this and be like, okay, this is just hype marketing. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think this is Miguel behind the scenes blowing people's minds and them using like this type of vernacular, because like you don't read a lot of that in Microsoft announcements, right? Like, hey, it's the next big thing, blah blah. It's big, but they don't use revolutionize. They don't use like, these are big words for a tooltip. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I am super excited about the changes incoming and that one in particular, but only because I've seen what he's done in the past. And if it is anything like that, this would be an area that I think would significantly change, I think, some reporting features and how people implemented things if, you know, it starts to come to fruition the way I've seen things in the past from him.
Yeah, he even throws so what I think you're referring to, Seth, is I put the link in the chat window. So there's a link on the Microsoft blog talking about the new tooltips, and then from there there's a link to a LinkedIn post that Miguel is written, and in there's some screenshots. Looking at the screenshot under the summary section is what he's talking about. There's a whole bunch of really, I mean, he's already showing like a different tooltip on a line that has all these different categories with details and information in there. And you can see as the cursor is highlighting things. I mean, even just this screenshot, the teaser that he throws on there is really interesting, and it's really going to be able to enhance this a lot. So the whole, he's the right person to be on the visuals building team. I mean, it's just bar none. It's so good. Yeah, I'm very excited about that one. I'm gonna kind of pull up here a bit. I'm gonna go. You were going down to some of the details, Seth. So
I did.
I want to pull up here. I think Tommy's gonna like this one. I think this is.
Are
If this
you
was
my thunder here, but that's okay. I know where you're
well,
going.
if we were giving out, so every year around Christmas we give everyone gifts, and this feels like an early Christmas gift to Tommy. So they are thrilled to announce a new AI capability called AI Skills, and so I'm still trying to wrap. So I'm wrapping my head around like, what is AI Skills? How do I use it? There's actually a really good video that's on the blog post, and it kind of walks you through like, okay, here's a thing called an AI skill, and it kind of gives you a guidance, walks you through how that experience will work. You have a data model. You can pick which tables you care about. You can start asking questions of things, and it's kind of like an AI builder experience a little bit. And then you can utilize that to then give people insights or information about your data. So what I'm a little fuzzy on still is like, how do I implement it? And what's the value add for people that are going to be using these AI skills? But it feels like we've had a lot of gripes with data and AI previously. It feels like this is an attempt to start really trying to provide some supplemental report author or data modeler information to an AI model that will help you skill it up faster and give better results, more accurate results to what people really want.
And it's great timing too by Microsoft, because OpenAI literally announced last week that their new model is going to be able to take any CSV data and analyze it for you. Do basically the same thing. But no, from a Microsoft focus, I'm curious too, Mike, because a huge focus here is Copilot. Copilot, not just in the Fabric sphere, but Copilot from a Microsoft point of view, looking at your business data, the Copilot Studio. The AI skill part, I'm in the same boat as you, incredibly intrigued, and I think more incredibly excited, because the AI skills look to be building your Q&A, but really hyper focus, almost like what we asked for with the automated insights. Can I weight my tables? Can I weight my columns? And we never had that ability. So I can actually choose the tables. So kind of a little background with the AI skills, which again, you're going to see a lot of content from me on this stuff, a ton, because I'm writing stuff.
This is why I knew you'd like this one.
Yeah. The AI skills, I can choose tables in a lake house, and I can selectively choose the columns and tables, and I can basically start a prompt and start saying, hey, who's my best sales rep? Well, that's not the result I want. So let me modify what the results are. So it's like it's like the kid version of training your AI model, of training an AI model. It's the kiddie version, but
yes and no. But it's so the part that was missing before was this context. There's additional context. Like, so I ask a question, it responds with something. Well, it may not be all the things that I need. And they have this ability to, they have notes to the model. So they have this other area that is like additional notes you send into the model. So like, look, hey, when I say customer, I mean this, and this. I mean, customer is first name, last name. I want to see their address. I want to see their total sales from this table, right? You give it more context, and it's becoming smarter on how the response is. And okay, cool. But what's really neat is it's writing a SQL statement. It's not just, and this is, I think, something that's going to be tricky to negotiate is, if you use AI against a data set, how do you know it's right? How do you know what information it's providing to you is accurate, right? Which customer has the highest amount of sales? It may just present to you a list. Okay, what good is that? So what it does, though, is it writes a SQL statement based on the question, and then you can, I would presume, I haven't seen it yet, but I would presume you could go modify that, or you could go tweak it. I mean, there's literally SQL there. And I think to myself, okay, this is an attempt to justify the answer with an actual code snippet that shows you how it's going to get the data and return it. And to me, this is really cool. Like the fact that it's doing that code generation and producing you the results in a nice, easy to read format. This, I think, could be much more impactful, because now you're going to not only learn how to do simple statements, talk to the model, but you're going to get more complex SQL statements out, and you're going to learn SQL too. So this is great because the business users who don't know all this stuff yet, or just getting into this, they're now going to start exposure to a more rich query language. And now when we go over to the SQL analytics endpoint, no problem. We've already been exposed to all these SQL statements. I'll start copying them over and start utilizing them in SQL endpoints. This is, I think this part of this feature is much bigger than they made it to be in the blog. I think I'm very excited to see where this is going to go.
Have you built a custom GPT yet, or tried building one?
I have not.
Okay, so it's very
I
much.
know my lane, Tommy, and that is not my lane.
So, well, this goes back to my Venn diagram of analytics skills, and I think again a big one is going to be this prompting. So, if you in OpenAI, you can actually kind of build your own little thing, but it's the same kind of workflow. I am telling, hey, GPT, no, I don't want you to focus on this. The bigger difference is I'm choosing my columns, but Mike, not just is it showing you the SQL to verify what you're saying, which again, I think we did an example in one of our episodes. You're like, hey, your number 16. You're like, I did the math and you're not right, but it's actually showing you the SQL. But more importantly, like I'm going to be able to basically produce these skills to my business to say, hey, I have a sales rep GP Copilot, or I have a sales rep skill. This is going to be anytime this data is in a report or in this particular lakehouse, this skill will be available. So the fact that I can train it, and to your point, I think it's the SQL is huge for us as the analytics side, but from the business user that we're being able to actually train this, there's so many capabilities here. Yeah.
What's very interesting to me is, Mike made a comment earlier about how we've talked about how does AI run well. Well, all the data's got to be in the same place, right? So this is one lake. It's Fabric. Yep. I think this feature is very telling, and I think encapsulates the story of what needs to happen for AI to work, and for the really big differentiator of what Fabric provides that others are not right now, right? And the reason is, how do you, like, this feature is basically saying, here's an AI capability that you can get some incremental help with, right? Like you're asking for a singular experience, you wanted to explain something, you can refine that, right? Yes. And there's a little bit of value there. Or you can create this object that is valuable to the business, and then in the second paragraph, as it's describing, like, well, like, what does the future look like? Well, in the future, you'll be able to take these and then leverage them for other copilots, right? So all this is to Tommy's point, right? Like, you're utilizing your own organization to train the models, right? Yes. So these are all of the steps of, we have the data, we're refining it, I'm getting incremental value, so there's value for me to go do this. But ultimately, what are you doing? You're creating the biggest challenge that everybody wants to create, which is the ultimate chatbot for your business. Right. Yeah. And guess what? You can't just do it. Like, it takes a lot of work to get there. But incrementally, if you think about, if everybody's using Fabric, right? If everybody's doing these things, wow, you can train things a lot faster than just a singular team, can't you?
Right. Yes, you can. Exactly right.
Yeah. And my last point, I'll say, I think Microsoft, if anyone's going to realize that you have to guide AI to say, hey, you can take a left, you can go to any stores on the left, you can't go right. And is realizing that if it's going to work, you have to guide it. I'm super excited about that. Guys, I'm surprised you guys, the developer nerds out there, we haven't talked about the framework here, which I feel like to me is kind of maybe the biggest announcement here, or one of the, I think, largest impact announcements is the Fabric framework that's now available
for ISVs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
or for anyone.
Well, so this is interesting. So there's a new large feature, and this has actually got a full session in the build group. So again, I was working the booth, I didn't get a chance to go to it, but I was actually talking to the PM who's building this.
Oh, nice.
Aviv is the gentleman who was working on this feature, and he said, you might want to say, well, explain it a bit more. Why would I want to use this? So this is the idea of embedding external applications directly into your Fabric. So say you're Esri and you want to do some advanced mapping things, right? Esri is a great map, but it's a little tiny visual on a report page. Well, Esri has a whole suite of things you can do with mapping. And if you have a subscription to it, you can basically full window that application. So what's happening to your point, Seth, earlier about Fabric is the place for data. Well, once you have the place for data, what do you need to bring to it? All the applications that can do things to the data.
Yeah.
Do you want to go interpret images? Do you want to do some audio file processing? Well, there's services already out there that do this. There's now going to be a marketplace for independent seller people to come in and build their own stuff. And I thought to myself, this sounds like a great place for the theme generator to live. I've got to figure out how to make this work.
This is a good idea.
And to the team, they were like, what are you talking about, theme generator? And then I had to show them what's a theme generator. And they're like, you can do all this? This is amazing. So, but it's the idea of like, you can build third-party tooling and bring it into Fabric. And so, okay, look, I have now you get an area where I'm going to go grab a lake house and talk to its delta tables. All that can just happen. You now just need to build an integrator between your application and connecting to the data, like ready to go. Everything's already loaded. So instead of bringing my data to the application, this has been the challenge for years, right? When I go to Salesforce, why do I go to Salesforce and have Salesforce show up and have to send all my data there? Well, bring Salesforce to my OneLake. Maybe that's what I want to do. So I think technically the name of this is called workloads. I think is actually the name there of what Microsoft is doing, and they're working with partners today to build out some applications and things that are going to be built into the program. So I see a lot of potential here. I see this is going to be an opportunity that's going to be really interesting. I'll put the link here in the chat window so people can go see the public announcement of workloads, because this is. You're right, Tommy. This is, I think, a pretty major announcement. As far as things that are going to change my world, this one probably will not directly impact me, but it's going to give me a lot more opportunity to see other programs and figure out what do I need to pay for and bring other services into Power BI Fabric.
Right. And to the point, I think, as we always say, words have meaning. They're calling all the other products in Fabric now workloads: Synapse, data engineering, data factory. They're calling them workloads. So basically these are now, in a sense, elevated
additional workloads that you're leveraging.
Right. Yeah. So
as part of your data ecosystem. That's
So I mean, even if you are a company, let's imagine you already are a company has. Yeah. Well, and I think there's also opportunity here. I don't know if this is ISV workloads, but I mean, imagine you are so. More and more are conversations coming up around, I am a company that makes data. I'm a data company. I have things that are data related, and I need to give it to my customers. I think there's something coming here brewing with Fabric where I'm going to be more easily able to distribute my data as a company into clients' worlds of data. Like, let's imagine they've got Fabric, I've got Fabric. Hey, you want an extract of all the data? Let me just build a solution, a tool that lets your Fabric communicate to my Fabric via shortcuts. Here's it already preloaded. Boom, ready to go. So I'm building the data. I still own it. I control it. If the customer stops paying me, I can turn that off. But now I have this ability to like integrate very easily to other people by giving them shortcuts through these apps potentially. There's a whole bunch of really interesting use cases here that I think you're going to be very creative here. And if nothing else, if you're a Power BI developer, this is not going to be as important. If you're a company that has data, or you're a data company that services data to your customers, you better pay attention to this part. Workloads potentially could change how your business works. Yeah, I like this one a lot. All right, one more thing here. I know we're getting close on time to the end here. One of the major announcements that I really, really like here, I'm a huge Databricks fan. I've said this a number of times on the podcast. I'm a big fan of Databricks. And the Unity catalog has been Databricks' kind of proprietary way of keeping you in the Databricks ecosystem, right? It's a way to categorize your data. It's lineage. It's helping you manage all your models, your ML stuff as well. It's part of that guiding bundle of everything that's inside your Databricks environment. Well, now you have, they recently announced it. They announced, one, you'll be able to connect to the Databricks Unity catalog. Great. So in just a few clicks, you'll be able to go into your catalog. You can load the full catalog and all the schemas. And this is nice because it will automatically be taken care of for you if you update tables, if you update schemas, if you add new data. Everything will just stay immediately up to date. So for one, that'll be huge. All my existing workloads just continue to work. So my investments stay, but now I get access to all the information. So one thing I think I'm feeling here is if you're not in the Databricks Unity catalog, you're going to want to be, because it's going to be so much easier to get it in and administer data into Power BI Fabric by using Databricks. There's something else that came out in that announcement, and you have to be you have to read on a little bit. The second half of that announcement is federate OneLake as a remote catalog in Azure Databricks. So how I read this is you can now create a lakehouse and it makes a catalog in OneLake that you can then go directly access inside Databricks. So this is a two-way street now. Create data, bring it over into Fabric, make lakehouses, and then if I want to go use it for AI, machine learning, training, going back and forth, I now have the ability of going back over to Databricks and using my existing, like this data still stored in OneLake. OneLake is now going to act like a Unity catalog back to Databricks. That's pretty huge, I think. So the fact that they're going both directions, Databricks to Fabric and Fabric to Databricks, this reduces a lot of the friction. And so whatever works best for your team, you can now just utilize that. So I feel like I'm not smart. I'll tell you this right now. I'm a dummy. I make a lot of mistakes, but I have made a very good decision by learning Databricks. It has been a very good career move, and it is incredibly wise for me to understand how it works. It's helped me a lot of this new Fabric stuff. I understand things a lot faster because I've already been doing it for years. So I'm very pleased to see that the integration between the two platforms is getting much tighter.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, there's some questions in the chat about Donald, like, isn't Databricks a competitor? Yeah, I mean, but in this new world, competitors are working alongside each other.
Yeah,
especially in the world of analytics, where the tighter those integrations are between these systems, the less reason there is to like fully migrate off one or the other. Unless it gets to a tipping point where all of the sudden, there's a need. But to your point, there's not, right? Like data stored, like many Databricks implementations are already storing data in Azure, right? You're mounting stuff to an Azure data lake. The Databricks ecosystem is creating the Delta tables, managing it, doing all the things. So Fabric is also doing that. To access my data via a Databricks connection or whatever, like there's no need to migrate anything, right? Does that mean I don't have new workloads in Fabric? Well, no, because now I have an ecosystem where it doesn't matter where my data lives. And what this is doing is saying, like, whether it's on premises for certain, things, it's not everything out of the gate, but in this world, Fabric is the mesh that's basically allowing organizations to have your third-party app, to have your random SQL database, to have your, Databricks over here and your Fabric over here. And you know what? It doesn't matter, because when we're trying to bring all the data together to make it meaningful, that's what Fabric's providing, right? It's no longer we have all these ETL processes and these services and everything that we've got to plug in together, and like all of the infrastructure and architecture. Now it's just much easier to access these systems. And that, I think, is the important part here. It's mattering less where what we've decided in terms of where we want to store and process our data. And it's mattering more that we have accessibility to all of that or larger swaths of that in the fashion that we don't, like, especially when we're not paying for data movement, right? And that's in large part why a lot of these are challenging exercises for organizations, because regardless, if you wanted that data lake, right, if you wanted all of your data in a place, it costs money to move it all there.
Yes.
And I think these are all moves to just ensure that, hey, yes, like eventually you're going to have some costs in here when you're processing things, but it shouldn't be on the most remedial thing of like just accessing your data, right? So I think that's one of these things that we may not embellish as much about. So like architecturally, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities between, what Databricks has done, where Fabric is going, but that, to Microsoft, what do? They come in second, right? They leverage a lot of the things that have been going on, that others have been pioneers for. And no, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to move off platforms that, especially if you are a Databricks customer, like you have large volumes of data. I guarantee, like typically you're running large, big things. Those aren't things that you just go, oh, Fabric, new thing, let's move.
Correct. But there is a lot less friction now than you used to be able to. So like, I mean,
A ton
you're
less,
writing,
right? And that's
you're
where,
writing that this is now it's going to be okay. Now, what are we actually competing on? Is there a feature set that we're competing on? Is there a price point that we're competing on? Like what
Yeah.
is the now new competition that we're looking at between which platform do I pick and what do I start with?
Yeah.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't do one last note here. You'll notice in your Power BI environment there is a new icon that you see called the real-time hub. So one other very overarching, I think, theme of build that I've seen being here has been this idea of like things are now real time. Data is moving. I have reservations about that concept. I like the idea of it, but I really do feel like there has to be a concerted conversation around, do we really need it? Do we really need the ability for us to have real-time analytics? Are we making decisions fast enough that the extra cost every time you go to real time, something's got to be on. You're paying for some sort of compute to do things to get the data to you. Fine. If you can justify that, if the value is high enough, yeah, do it. So I haven't played with the real-time hub. I don't really know what's going on there right now with yet. So I can't speak too much about like the platform, the program, how much compute does it use or consume. But I do think there's a very interesting story around this whole real-time data. What data is coming to you in real time, and how do you leverage that? So that could be really interesting, actually.
If you and I have ever agreed on something more, this is it. So
the need for real time.
The need for real time. If we've never agreed more, this is that moment, because I'm the same exact boat. It's cool, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of cost there. I don't know in terms of where the play is or the larger story here. There's obviously more coming here. Like, right, this is not just at the end here.
Like obviously this is a topic for another day, right? But just real quick, like I think we find ourselves in the world of it's okay to have, delays in process data, because obviously we're consolidating all this data together. We're doing a lot of things to it. There's a lot of processing and time that has to happen before you put that in front of somebody. That's not all reporting cases, right?
Yes,
there are and this is where I think real time, you have to be very strategic about it, because it's gonna cost you. Do you have some reports that require like views into production? And that's where I do see that there would be a fantastic use case of like small subsets or very highly used reporting where somebody needs access to what the real-time data is in the production system. You just don't want to hit the production system. You never wanted to hit the production system, right? Which is why they build availability groups and all these other read-only things. And ultimately all this is to me is like offering that other type of reporting that absolutely requires that you have the production changes happening in your reporting when you're pinging them.
Totally agree with that one. So this will definitely we'll need to dive into some more videos. There's a whole bunch of new things here added into the Fabric ecosystem. All right, Tommy, we got our work cut out for us. We got a whole bunch more learn Fabric. We got to start getting our head around. If we didn't have a lot already, we got to do a whole lot more, because there's a whole lot of new things we got to play around with now, which is exciting. I like it. But if I wasn't overwhelmed before with Fabric, I'm getting more overwhelmed now with all the new options and things. And how do I pick which one I'm using? Which real time do I care about? How can I leverage these things? So very exciting.
How many years do I own?
Oh man, yes, exactly right. So anyways, with that, we want to say thank you very much for joining the podcast. We hope you enjoyed this conversation around the Build conference. There's probably going to be many more conversations around Build. And maybe we'll even try and do a MVPs react to the Build conference as well. So maybe when I get back in town and we get a little bit more settled, we'll watch the video together with you, and we'll react to it as it happens live. So I think we've had some requests to do it again from last year. We did it last year as well, so we might do it again this year as well. If you want to see that, let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like this episode, if you like what we're talking about here from Build, please share it with somebody else. Let somebody else know that you enjoyed this content, and we'd love to get the word out there that this is a pretty decent, somewhat good podcast that you can use while you run. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You don't have to run and listen, by the way. You can find us on Apple. You'll find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Do you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. Finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
Do you know you sound very New York whenever you say all social media channels?
Certain words, they're very New York.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you?
What's the matter for you? All right.
With that, thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.